Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Blossom here once again, and I'm back for some more of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my Let's Play of Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards for the Nintendo 64. So, last time we actually did fully completely done with World 4 by the forms of, Neo Star, and now we're going to be continue on and moving on to the 5th world in this game by the forms of Shiver Star. So, before you actually jump into this particular planet feels a bit familiar because first of all, this particular moon starts able to keep on rotating all of a sudden, and also this particular planet, as far as the actual Shiver Star itself, it almost feels very similar to the planet Earth, except, well, everything else is all in white and grey, because even then though, you'll see why until we're able to actually explore for Shiver Star. And let's get this thing started by the forms of the first level in the forms of Shiver Star. And this will take place in a snowy themed level because that's the reason why it's got all white all over the place. So even now, let's get started right there. Sorry for a little bit of a tangent right there. So anyways though, as you can tell that once again I've changed my display border again, but this time we actually got ourselves frame number 4, or in this case display 4. And even now, it's almost like exactly similar to the ones in the actual exact same style as what Kirby Dream Land 3's game's visual style, which even now, because it's made out of crayon and all that stuff, but I feel like, well, kind of fits the tone for this particular part for the most part though, but I digress though. So yeah, what else can I say about this here? Well, today was actually in forms of I would say today was the 14th of May. But even now, there are quite a few things I just want to briefly mention about this. It's the fact that, well, obviously we've always finished up with this particular Let's Play already. I can't believe we're actually bracing for this game super duper fast. Well, it might be not a very long game per se, unlike the ones in Kirby Dream Land 3, because in Kirby Dream Land 3, usually introduces the mission structure, but even then, this game does feels more accurately a short-term and minimum game to able to actually just to tackle through, because as far as I'm aware though, this might be the final time we're gonna be jump into one of those worlds that usually contains like 4 regular levels, including the boss fight at the very end. So, until when we get to the 6th world, well, things can get a little bit more similar to the ones in the first world, because even now, you can definitely tell why. Assumingly we can able to actually just manage to finish this world here first. So, anyways though, after this particular ladder climbing, then we can actually come across into Waddle Dee with his bobsledge. So it's up to Kirby and Waddle Dee can have a really fun ride to able to actually ride on this bobsledge. So even then, it's almost like reminds me of the Winter Olympic events, but except it doesn't have the Olympic Stadium on there. So even now we have to dodge through every enemies and obstacles or hazards, and including ingloos. So, and I think that's the perfect solution by the forms of the first crystal we need to obtain though is to able to jump on the second ingloo until you're able to actually get yourselves the first crystal. And the second crystal is that, as you can see, I've got myself both fire and fire copy ability combination, because the reason why we have to do this is because, well, you'll see why I'm just about right about now. So here's this little alcove right there. You might be thinking this might be not something related to the level or anything like that, but it's the actual purpose of that's where the crystal's located. So even I know, oh, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Are you for real? Are you for real? That's, oh shoot. Oh, please don't tell me I have to do this all again. Oh, flip me. Okay, I have to quickly do a jump cut right there because I accidentally managed to able to run into the actual because for some reason, whenever you're trying to do a the fire dash by the forms of the fire and fire combination power, you cannot able to actually change directions in midair or anything like that after when you're able to use that ability, and as a result, I ended up getting stuck, and especially noticeable that these little ice bird type enemies just always about to get me, which even then though, that is incredibly stingy on my part, or even in this case, that was incredibly cheap, I might as well add. I haven't really sort of mentioned about this in during the likes of the last video that normally we actually did explore through you know, World 4-4, the one time we have to explore the volcano section. Well, we actually ended up introducing to ourselves these firebirds, which, you know, very similar to the ones in Mario vs. Donkey Kong game on the Game Boy Advance. I think I've already sort of mentioned about this or something, but I really don't know, because I was mainly discussing upon these new kinds of stuff like that, but in forms of new Nintendo stuff, especially noticeable with the new Sega stuff, or even especially some rumors out there. But anyways though, I should probably mention about this actually, before we get to this actually, how the fact that we actually introduced into our icebergs that the one time they actually killed me for once. These are very much like the equivalent to, you know, firebirds, except they can't shoot fire, instead they shoot ice stuff, so that's pretty obvious what there are some differences, but in forms of, you know, between fire and ice, because, you know, ice can be easily be melted by fire, and, you know, fire can be extinguished with water, and, I'm assuming, water can able to actually, oh no, actually, I think ice can able to actually, let's just say, like, froze up the water, which even I know that makes a little bit more sense, because, you know, if you ever played Luigi's Mansion before, that's, one of the elements, but in forms of the fire element, and in forms of, the water element, and the ice elements can be performed like a rock, paper, scissors, syndrome, that, you know, fire beats, ice, ice beats water, and water beats fire, so that's pretty obvious with this solution. And as you can tell right there from the previous room, is that I've now finally managed to obtain the third and final crystal. In order to actually get to there, is by simply we need to able to actually swim underwater with cold water. Well, good thing for Kirby though is the fact that he can able to actually survive in this ice water, unlike the ones in let's just say Super Mario 64 in the forms of Snowman's Land. That in the forms of how the fact that if you accidentally manage to jump into these ice water, or even especially noticeable when if you're able to swim onto the water while the actual temperature is still freezing, well, it'll lose a bit of your health. So even though that almost feels remarkably similar to the ones well before, you know, Super Mario Galaxy / Super Mario Galaxy 2 exists, but in forms of, you know, just frozen water and all that stuff. And especially noticeable the most recently Super Mario Odyssey in the forms of the Snow Kingdom, which, spoiler alerts for those of you who haven't sorted this out, but in forms of that particular Let's Play continuing though. In fact, I would appreciate of how the fact that Mario definitely need to come back into Super Mario Odyssey, amongst other with how the fact that definitely needs to get back into Pac-Man World eventually. But anyways though, we got ourselves our excuse me. We got ourselves our next enemy info card right about now, and let's move on to the second level. For this, we're going to be exploring above the clouds, as you expected, much like the ones in, you know, Cloudy Park from Kirby's Dream Land 2 and 3, and even especially noticeable in Grape Garden in the forms of, you know, Kirby's Adventure / Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland for the Game Boy Advance. So that's pretty obvious with this solution, but except the fact that everything else is entirely in 3D. Well, I should say 2.5D. For this little dimensions, for Steve Nando, that yeah. So, obviously the crystals to obtain in this particular level, well the first two are pretty easy to obtain though, because they are very very simple to get. But the third and final one, we do need to get ourselves a combination copy ability, which I believe we do need both Needle and Spark, which even Nando, that if we manage to able to get those two powers all in one, that way we can able to actually get ourselves the, you know, the copy ability itself, or in this case, the actual, crystal itself. So, the first one is actually, down there, if you manage to fall down here, and that way you can easily grab it from there. You can just simply just able to, get onto the edge, and that's about it. So, pretty self-explanatory though, really. So, anyways though, what's the next thing I was trying to say right here? Oh yeah. But in forms of during about a couple of days ago, well, I should probably say about 4 days ago actually, a day before or after, whenever I managed to upload the forms of the first ever part of this particular Let's Play, I've managed to stumble across by the forms of this special updates, by the forms of Sonic Forces Speed Battle. Now, you remember how last time that we've already got ourselves both Blaze the Cat and Cream the Rabbit, because even though, despite how those two characters never made their appearance in the forms of the actual Sonic Forces game, because even then though, I have no idea how why Blaze the Cat or Cream the Rabbit does not exist on that game, because it did in the forms of Sonic Generations, but why not Sonic Forces? I mean, that doesn't make sense. So anyways, as you can see right there, we actually got ourselves our second crystal, which is pretty obvious to obtain though, because of this particular cannon section right there. So even then though, that way it deals the job done. And yeah, obviously we do need to get ourselves both combinations between both, you know, needle and spark ability all in one, so that way we can able to actually just to use that before we're able to actually decide to able to do something like that. So again, I should probably stress about this now again, that once again my life's still able to restart by the forms of, you know, go back into 3 and what have you. So anyway though, enough about that. So anyways, well, as I was saying, by the forms of Sonic Forces Speed Battle, of course we got a needle right there, so that's pretty easy to spawn. Now I believe there's going to be a spark enemy in this next room, so even then though, that way we can able to actually just to get ourselves that enemy right there. And then after we have managed to obtain that, then we pretty much going to be good to go when it comes to able to actually going all the way to the very end of this specific level alone. Sorry about this little tangent right there again. But anyways though, what if I play through Sonic Forces Speed Battle on the iOS phone devices? I've managed to stumble across the third new characters now finally going to be playable in Sonic Forces Speed Battle, and guess what? It's Big the freaking Cat. Not sure why he was there, but even though that it's been about, like, I would say it's been about 2 years since we've last time saw Big the Cat. I believe last time we saw Big the Cat, it was actually both Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games, for specifically on the Wii U, most likely, and especially noticeable in the forms of Lego Dimensions, in the forms of the Sonic Dimensions level pack, which, I know, right, it's been a long time coming, doesn't it? But I'm sure enough how the fact that, I'm pretty sure that Big has been giving up by the forms of fishing for Froggy these days, ever since in 1998, well, for almost 20 years ago at this rate. But anyways though, so here's the spark enemy right there, so hopefully we can able to actually time this right, and boom, there we go. So that way we can able to actually use that while dodging for those little muncher looking hazards right there, which, even though it's not as easy to able to dodge those, unless if I need to able to keep my copy ability at all times, even though despite the fact that I keep on getting hit by these guys too many times. Especially noticeable with these little white ball looking stuff, which even though, again, I really do apologize about the fact that I did not memorize any of these enemies' names at all, unless if you actually keep on farming with those particular enemy info cards, but I digress. So yes, this is the reason why we do need a needle and a spark ability combined into one, so that way you can get ourselves a crystal that way. So let's go ahead and obtain ourselves the red star, of course, even though I could potentially try to go for that enemy info card again, but unfortunately, I didn't get my chance to do that. So, moving on to level 3. Now, this level is very interesting because we can actually take a look and explore as soon as we actually get inside the actual building, because we're going to be exploring through the toy mall, or especially noticeable body forms of the toy store. Or to be more accurately, a shopping mall, because this is probably the most uniquest level of the entire game in my opinion. Even the actual world itself actually, because, well, first off, the first level in the Shiver Star is obviously a snowy themed level, and the second level takes place in the skies, in the clouds, and all that stuff. And the third level we actually come across into is the actual forms of the actual, I would say, toy store, because I can definitely tell, because this particular setup, even the actual environment, almost reminds me like a toy shop, or even especially noticeable by the forms of the toy factory of any kind, because we got ourselves these conveyor belts, as you can see here. Oh god, these particular enemies, they do remind me by the forms of one of those enemies in the forms of Sonic the Hedgehog for episode 2. Whenever you come across into those little particular, I would say these little armadillo, or in this case a push bug looking creatures, that it pretty much does the exact same ways of how it does in Sonic for episode 2. Except the fact that we're not playing the actual Sonic game, we're actually going to be playing a Kirby game after all. And I think I get the feeling that I'm might as well able to die at any moment's notice. Mainly these particular buttholes right there, because yeah, I accidentally died right there, so there goes 3 lives down at this rate, but in forms of this particular death situations in mind. So this is why the game starts to get pretty darn difficult these days, especially noticeable how differently the enemy behavior was sometimes. Well, it wasn't nearly as bad as compared to the ones in Kirby Dream Land 3 in my opinion, but I kind of still wish that it has like a blocking button, which even though if I manage to get the blocking button ever since, you know, Kirby Superstar / Kirby's Fun Pack, if you will, that way it sure just makes the journey a lot more comfortable to me. But no, I guess we're just actually going back into the old school roots, but in forms of, you know, similar mechanic or the similar gameplay style, but in forms of Kirby's Dream Land 1, 2, and 3, excluding Kirby's Adventure for the NES, because in that version of the game of Kirby's Adventure also has no blocking. So anyways though, so I believe I'll go ahead and get myself my needle real quickly, because in the next level, after this level though anyway, I'm pretty sure one of the first crystals that we can able to obtain from for this next level, we do need both needle and rock, much like the ones in level 4-3 that normally takes place in the mountain sites and all that stuff, because we do need to get ourselves our drill ability, but I don't think there's any copy ability specific combinations that we can use, but in forms of this level, because this level is very straightforward when it comes to obtaining every single crystals in mind, because even then though, that as long as you know where they are, then you pretty much have no issues with that whatsoever. So anyways, we got ourselves this particular mini fight here, so even then let's kill him, and we get ourselves the second crystal right off the bat. And also, if you ever think about this level is going to be over with, well, we got ourselves this particular puzzle. So we have peach, cherry, and melon. So all you have to do in this particular part is the fact that we need to able to guess what color does the fruits represent. So like for instance, peach was actually pink, cherries which are normally red, and of course green could be used for melon. Well, almost like a light green, but ultimately it's more accurately just green as what is usually according to what it says, which again, still pretty much randomized though every time you actually load up your next new save file, or even especially noticeable body forms of pretty much for the sake of everything here. So that's pretty obvious with this solution right there. So anyways, let's go ahead and just normally we're gonna have to finish this level right there. So even though that after we're able to actually just go ahead, or actually before we do that, before we finish the level off, we need to, you know, dodge as many hazards as possible. And yeah, that's what I can usually just come across into that kinds of stuff. So oh, speaking of such, we have ourselves a rock enemy right there. So let's go ahead. Son of a... Well, guess what though, I'm gonna have to find another way, so that way I can able to actually get the not only rock, but also the forms of the needle ability as well. I think I might actually get ourselves the those two combination powers after this particular level's finished. Although what's the good thing about this is that unlike the ones in I would say both Kirby's Dream Land 2 and especially noticeable, and also same applies for Kirby's Adventure as well, and also same applies for Kirby's Dream Land 3, is the fact that unlike in the other 3 games, that you have to purposely try to complete the main level in order to actually just get back into the world map normally, because there's no exit option in the pause menu unless if you actually already complete the level normally. Well, it turns out in this game is the fact that if you manage to able to actually get one mistake or what have you, you can just simply just hit back and just able to actually get back into the level select, and then just select try again, so that as a result it takes you immediately back into the level select screen without any able to actually just to complete the level as normal. So that's pretty cool, especially noticeable where the future games comes into play, whenever there's like the exact same options between each other, but in forms of, you know, if you're having trouble with that specific stuff, then by all means you can actually hit the pause menu and able to actually select exit, and then you would able to go back to the level select and try again. So even though that way you can able to get yourselves a better performance, but in forms of certain tactics or what have you. But anyway though. So we've now made it towards the end, so let's see what reward I can get. I get nothing. Jeez, what's going on with my skills for it today? So I digress though, so we go ourselves the next level here. Okay, I managed to do a jump cut right there, because it turns out that, as I mentioned this before, but in forms of level 4 in Shiver Star, I need to able to go ahead and grab, since I still got myself rock with me for the entire time, and obviously I've got myself needle with me, so that way we can able to get ourselves our drill ability. So that means let's get started by the forms of level 4. So this will instantly takes place in the actual factory, as opposed to how it does in level 3. It's more accurately somewhat similar to this toy shop. So now we're about to be exploring for the actual factory. So, or in this case, the actual Gizmo, Gizmo stuff there. So even now, that makes it pretty obvious right there. Or in this case, a Gizmo shop, if I like to say for this much. So anyways though, let's go down here and hopefully be very careful right there because we don't want to get hit by these too many Gordos right there. But honestly, I think these Gordos aren't that bad this throughout, unlike the ones in the most devastating enemies of the bunch in the forms of, you know, Kirby Dreamland 1 for instance. But hey, be careful of these torpedo looking fire radius right there. And yes, this is why we need both rock and needle, because if you manage to able to actually jump in midair and able to actually use the drill from the downwards formation, that way it can actually just drill through the actual ground. So even I know that, you know, just like the ones in you know, in level 4-3, but except the fact that it usually takes place in a different environment. So anyways though, so let's go ahead and obtain the first crystal there. And the second crystal, we do need to get a different combination power, but this time around though, we need to obtain both Cutter and Spark. So that way we can able to actually get those combination powers once we're able to get to this later portions of this particular level. But of course, we got ourselves our King DDD section right there. But this might be a little bit tricky this time around though, because, well, obviously we do need to be able to work out by the forms of these conveyor belts itself. And especially noticeable, you don't want to get hit by this little giant hammer in the background, because if you manage to get hit by a hammer in the actual background, I'm assuming it's actually instant death on you, or maybe it's probably just one hit or something like that, but I digress. Well, I never noticed that because, as you can tell already, I'm actually really good at this level. I think it's for the most part though, but usually as far as I may think it about. So yeah, I was really oh, you gotta be kidding me. I always get hit by enemies because there's no way I can dodge, because they usually just becomes, you know, a little bit of a hitbox issue or something like that, but I really don't know for sure about it. But anyway, so once again, he's gonna chuck me all the way to this next room, just like the ones in, you know, in Neo Star's 4th level. And since then, I need to go ahead and get myself Cutter ability at the moment, because even then though, that way we can able to actually just, you know, come across into a Cutter enemy, and especially noticeable that we would able to actually bump into, you know, the Spark enemy that we do definitely need, by the forms of the next crystal that we need to obtain. Now, luckily though, the third and final crystal is not that complicated to get to, because even though it's self-explanatory. But for the most part though, as long as you know what you're doing, then you would able to actually do this just fine. So even though that, let's just go ahead and just continue on forward. And yeah, I just really cannot believe how the fact that Big the Cat makes an appearance in the forms of Sonic Force's speed battle all this time, because even then, I did not notice that until my notification pops up in the forms of whenever I normally turn on the notifications on in my Sonic Force's speed battle game. And as a result of this little tradition, the fact that I just did not even notice that Big the Cat was not going to be a playable character debuted, but turns out it was. So even then, I was incredibly shocked by then, because even I noticed that again, we haven't seen Big the Cat for almost 2 years now, because even I know that every now and then, because, you know, ever since, you know, Sonic Dimensions in the forms of Lego Dimensions, you know, character pack, level pack. So that's as far as I can mainly concern with this though. So this particular cat looks very freaky looking, especially noticeable where they normally becomes attainable by the forms of in the actual containers themselves. But anyways though, enough about this little visual structure or this sightseeing for now on though. So as you can tell right now, I'm having struggling by the forms of trying to able to get myself both Cutter and Spark ability, so that way we can able to do a combination power. Let's go ahead and obtain that, and son of a... Why do I do that? I'm such a fool. Anyways though, what I'm meant to do here is the fact that I need to able to, before I'm able to actually obtain Cutter right there, well, don't worry, as long as you're able to keep on getting certain mistakes and what have you, like I just did right there. Well, luckily though, you still got some plenty of chances left, because, you know, enemies do respawn, so even though that should be a good welcoming addition throughout. Especially noticeable how the fact that, well, it might be pretty linear at times, because of how the fact that there are some areas that usually just shuts down these doors by the forms of mini boss fights endurance like this. And this is really cool actually, if you can see right there. But in forms of the electric, or in this case a spark, and cutter ability combinations all combined, this is one of my favorite Kirby abilities in the game, because we actually ended up holding a double-edged lightsaber. Because I say lightsaber is because, well, it always reminds me like a Star Wars type of iconic weapon, which even then though, that does feel really cool. But even then though, in order to actually obtain rather, the second crystal is that again, we do need to able to actually require it to actually get ourselves, you know, spark and, you know, cutter until we're able to get ourselves our lifesaver. So, well, I won't say usually calls it lifesaver, but it might be something original name about it. But again, I need to able to research upon, you know, different Kirby abilities names, including the likes of, you know, the combination Kirby ability powers. So I just want to plow things out right away. So, anyways, though, again, there's not much else I can really say about this point, to be honest, because of how the fact that, well, besides I had my issue by the forms of today, actually. Well, originally we're supposed to be able to get ourselves our PlayStation stuff after all, by the forms of to get ourselves the some DLC stuff of Sonic Unleashed for the PlayStation 3. So that way, that definitely needs to get onto the practice of those DLC stages in Sonic Unleashed before you actually jump into the main actual thing. But, and also same applies to how it does it in forms of, I don't know if we can able to get ourselves Disney's action game featuring Hercules and all that stuff. And even especially noticeable by the forms of your new classic Sonic's dynamic theme of the PlayStation 3, because we're going to be spending our £20 of the forms of, you know, the PlayStation Network card. But there's one little problem, because even then though, that I did manage to order that from game, but all of a sudden my ordering on that specific item was cancelled. Where I was like, are you kidding me? But even then, I wasn't really sure of how the fact that I was expecting to see how that happening right there. But anyways, as I mentioned this before, the third and final crystal is going to be not that far from here. It's going to have to go onto this 4th floor, and then when you go all the way to the right, then that's how you get the third and final crystal. But you have to be very quick though, because as you expected, these little shifting wall gears will able to actually instantly kill you if you manage to do not make it in the nick of time. Because if you do not make it in the nick of time, then you're pretty much gonna get crushed. So even though you just have to watch out and stay sharp. So I think that pretty much does it for this level actually. So even though, let's go ahead and just finish off this level off, and we can able to actually get ourselves. I'm presuming I need to get myself my maximum tomato real quickly. Well, thankfully that was really short when it comes to that distance right there. And let's go ahead and face off against with the next boss in this game, and it appears to be more accurately a giant robot. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll present to you the 5th boss in the forms of Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards. And that honor goes to, as soon as I press the A button quickly, this is the forms of HRH, which by the looks of it though is basically a giant robot, which even then, that it always reminds me by the forms of the Egg King from Sonic Rush, except it's not on a dual screens or something like that. And especially noticeable that how the fact that, wow, it's on a Nintendo 64 instead of like Nintendo DS and all that stuff. So that's pretty obvious without some few moments notice. So basically this is how you're supposed to do in the forms of HR, or in this case HR. I can't pronounce that today, folks, because even then though, I'm having a hard time pronouncing for this boss. HRH. There we go. That's how I'm supposed to spell it. Basically what we have to do is basically we need to able to actually suck up his you know, rocket projectiles back and right into its arms, and then that's all you really have to try to do in this particular fight, and because that's all you have to do here. For some reason, as you can see right there, I've got myself 2 more bits of health left. So that's only because of all the bosses we actually run into in this game, to be honest, this is by far the hardest boss fight in the game in my opinion, just because there were a few plenty of times I keep on getting hit by the forms of, let's just say his arms for example, and especially noticeable by the forms of something else, but that wasn't a factor on the other hand. The hardest part about this fight to me though is definitely this section, because as you can tell right there, that HRH has been significantly transformed into a different model of this particular robot. I'm presuming this one is actually known as HRE, because of how this particular model of this particular robot has been slightly changed. Honestly, I found this particular section to be a lot easier than the ones in the first section to me though, but that wasn't the only part I was trying to think about this. I think I actually first experienced this particular boss fight back in Dreaming almost 10 years ago. Whenever I first time playing this game, I seriously got wrecked by this boss fight. It's probably because of how this boss fight works, or perhaps it's maybe because I wasn't really experiencing that much of Kirby games. It wasn't until in 2009 when my first experience of the forms of Kirby stuff starts to shine by the forms of obviously Kirby's Adventure for the NES, and especially noticeable by the forms of Kirby Superstar Ultra for the Nintendo DS. I'm still concerned about how the fact that the Kirby Superstar Ultra, how the fact that that game was really expensive at the moment, which I don't know exactly sure why the price is being significantly increased with Superstar Ultra, but that's just how it is throughout. So yeah, I'm afraid guys, we have to end things off for this point right there. Oh god, looks like Ripple Star is being pure chaos at the moment. So join me next time on Let's Play Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards. It's the fact that we're going to be jumping into World 6 Ripple Star, and hopefully we can able to fix everything up in that specific location. So yeah, see you guys next time. Later fellas.